Good evening, everyone. My name is Jerry Cooper. I am the project manager for special assessment districts for the City of Oxnard. Welcome to our team meeting tonight for LMD 25, 52, and 55, the Pointe, Seaview Estates, Wingfield, and Wingfield West. With us tonight, we have Pablo Perez and Danielle Wood of CivicMic, and they will be the ones conducting the meeting tonight and fielding any of your questions. So we look forward to engaging you this evening and showing you what our collaborative governance is all about. So take it away.
Thank you, Jerry. I am Danielle Wood with CivicMic, and I may have spoken to some of you on the phone before. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's nice to see dedicated members of your community who are interested in making a difference. And for us, as we've mentioned in previous meetings, high participation is key to this effort. So as we continue to go through this process, we'll talk about tonight how it's really important to get your neighbors involved and have them to participate in these meetings as well and take surveys and just help with this overall process. So for those of you that have attended the last meeting, the first one, you may have heard some of this, so I'll try and go quickly, but the city hired CivicMic to assist with public engagement efforts for your community. Our main focus is to work with communities and various organizations to create sustainable visions for your community's future. So many of you are signed up on CivicMic.com and you knew about this meeting prior to receiving a postcard in the mail. If you are not signed up, please visit CivicMic.com/Oxnard and scroll to the bottom there. You can see on your screen, you scroll to the bottom and you can add your information there, select your community, add your email name, and select to subscribe. There you will then be able to receive updates as we post information about your community, about your team that we're talking about tonight. You'll get an email update that kind of summarizes, and you can click in and see the full post for whatever has been posted about your community. So once you've done that, then you can also visit the page here and look at the neighborhood section where you can review information or news by neighborhood. And what we have there is a ton of information. So some of the stuff that we'll cover tonight, budgets, annual reports, you can see the mapping, where we're at with some of this engagement efforts. So go through here. There's a lot of information. We've populated this to help bring you up to speed. If you haven't been participating the whole time and you're new to this process with us, please look at that information there in the data center and the various news postings. So the city is focusing on representing your voice and trying to understand what priorities you have in making decisions. Community participation is very important, but with this participation, you'll be able to influence policymaking decisions. So this meeting set up in the format of a workshop. We'll cover a lot of information. This time it will be specific to your team or this group of neighborhoods. And we know that there's a lot of people that have past relationships with the city or have information they'd like to share about what's happened in the past, but these meetings are really focused on moving forward and how we can make a change from this point forward. So we've got a really great group to work with. We have Jerry at the city specifically for working on your communities with these districts, and we just really want to stay positive and look at how we can change things from this point forward. So there are some ground rules. We will try and keep the meeting around an hour tonight, and we will be covering a lot of information. If you have to get off of the call, the meeting will be posted to CivicMic.com. Give us a day or two to get that posted there. If you've signed up to receive updates, you'll get an update email saying that that has been posted. We will answer questions throughout. If it's specific to what we're talking about and we know that it won't be answered in a slide or two, then we'll address it then, or we may hold some of the questions to the end. But feel free to type your questions into the chat, save that just for questions and limit it limit conversations back and forth so we can see what questions people are asking. If we don't get your question answered, or you come up with something, something new that you want to know about, please feel free to reach out to us directly on civicmic.com or by calling us at 1-800-676-7516. You can ask for myself, Danielle, or Pablo, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions. So with the meeting this size, we will have all of you on mute. We want you to be able to hear the presentation, and sometimes when individuals click off mute, there's background noise. So if you notice that you keep taking the mute button off and it gets put back on, that's intentional, because we'd like for everyone to be able to hear the presentation. We also would like to hear from as many of you as possible. We want everyone on here that has questions to ask them or provide input. And we know that you have very diverse backgrounds and diverse values, and we'd like to hear from all of you. So we'll make every attempt to shield you from any personal attacks or slander. If there is anyone in this group that is making personal attacks on another person in the meeting, we will move you to a waiting room, and so you can regain your composure. And then when you return, if that behavior continues, we'll kick you out of the meeting and you won't be able to return. So I don't think that'll happen. We haven't had that happen, but we just want to be clear on the expectations for everyone. Once again, this meeting is intended to focus on moving forward, and we are really happy to get started. So we'll let you get into the good stuff. Pablo Perez will be handling the community specific workshop. Pablo?
All right, and the audio is good, Danielle? You can hear me clear?
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you everybody for taking the time to participate in this meeting and effort. I think that we can safely agree that the public improvements, both in the interior and exterior of the neighborhoods being discussed here tonight, are in much need of repair and a higher level of ongoing maintenance. We believe that there's an opportunity here to turn these areas in Oxnard around for the better. We believe that by doing so, we can improve the lives of many residents in the city, and that we can be, all can be a part of a success story that can be replicated throughout the city. This is not, the issues discussed here tonight are just not limited to these neighborhoods, but rather throughout the city. How do we do this? Well, we plan doing this by engaging and informing you about the issues, being your advocate, and together create viable solutions. A lot of the questions we get are like, well, what do solutions look like? Well, it really depends on each community. At the introduction meeting, we talked about how residents may want to be involved, and those that took the survey, we asked the question about, are you willing or available to perform some sort of a maintenance work or effort, sort of a pick up trash day or things like that. And while that may work for some communities, we know that it doesn't work for all. So that may be a part of a solution for some, but not for all. Others may want to have the homeowners association or a nonprofit organization be involved. We have a neighborhood in particular that there's a person who knows somebody, right, at a nonprofit organization that is willing and able to work to improve the community, make the community a pet project for that nonprofit organization. In other places, you may rely heavily on the city to manage and perform the work. But regardless, the ideal solution has to result in a better partnership than what we have today between the city and its residents. In my opinion, and in this case, the best chance for a viable solution is one that has the city, where the city is represented by the Special Districts Division. This is where Jerry Cooper works at. It is a small group of city employees dedicated to the implementation of these solutions. It is a division of the city fully dedicated to the work being performed inside of your communities currently with the landscaping maintenance districts. And also, the residents need to be represented by a new to be created citizens committee, a small group of residents to work with Jerry and its staff on an ongoing basis to streamline communications and ensure a long-lasting partnership. Again, we're not searching for a cookie cutter solution or a one size fits all, but instead we're meeting with each small group of neighborhoods individually to ascertain what works best for their needs. And when possible, consolidate efforts to achieve some efficiencies and economies of scale, which should result in lower costs, particularly in the administrative side. We had a lot of questions about the lines that we drew and the way we grouped the communities. These are just preliminary. It's a starting point to engage you. They're in no way a final solution. So this is something that is going to be worked out and figure out as to, what comprehends the group of communities that are going to be working together. Ultimately, we anticipate no fast outcomes here. This is going to be a steady progress through multiple workshop meetings. We're going to need the creation of a citizens committee early in the process for the best chance of success. And that's the most important thing. We need volunteers for this committee, so we want to hear from you. We will need everyone's assistance in sharing this information. You'll notice there's a small group of participants here tonight, though we sent out over 400 postcards, I believe. So clearly, we need more participation so that everybody's informed. We will support your efforts with online and printed materials for dissemination, and we'll have additional informational meetings. Ultimately, we're going to vet the solutions and work with the city on preparing those cost estimates for your review and further discussion. We expect multiple iterations of this process, going back and forth, going through the budgets, running rates, and then sharing that with you. And ultimately, you'll be making the decision. Ultimately, we anticipate achieving a consensus on a viable solution that can be supported by at least 2/3 of the residents. So this is very, very important. One of the most important things you can learn from us tonight. I hear a lot about, well, the city's going to raise my taxes, and I want to demystify that immediately. It is very difficult, almost impossible, really, for any city in California these days to raise your property taxes on their own. Pretty much everything that goes on the tax bill, other than the ad valorem tax, which is driven by the value of your property, requires some sort of a vote. Most likely, any solution coming out of this effort is going to require more funding. That funding is going to come in the form of a Melrose district, most likely, because it is the most flexible tool. And if so, it can only pass if 2/3 of the registered voters vote for it. So that's why participation is so important. To hit that threshold requires that we are all on board having these discussions well informed. So everybody needs to be at the table. Tonight, we're going to talk about your property taxes and where they're currently going, the overview of the special districts division. We're going to cover and show that map with a proposed geographical area for starters, again, a starting point. We're going to share some of the results from the survey, the things that matter to you. We're going to talk about possible desired outcomes for discussion, the level of involvement that this community may want to have, and then next steps, okay? So with that said, I don't see any immediate questions here. I'm going to start with the slides then. So tonight we're covering what we call the Pointe, and I should have updated this slide. It's actually the surrounding area is actually called Seaview Estates. They didn't have that at the time, thanks to a resident that passed that on to me a couple of days ago. Wingfield and Wingfield West. This is the geographical area, and again, it's a proposed area just because we already have 3 particular assessment districts in here. And we're trying to capture, sort of create a block where we can share economies of scale, right? I'll have more maps on this to show you, but so I will come back in a second. This is just a starting point for engagement. You're currently, most people here are currently in 3 assessment districts. You're either at the Pointe, Wingfield, or Wingfield West. The first thing to know is that you are in an assessment district because when the developer came to town that many, many years ago, in this case, 96, 2005, and 06, it was a requirement for the developer to form an assessment district with the city. The point of that was that from the get-go, the city will not be able to sustain your improvements, right? So the idea was that the landscaping and maintenance district funded by your assessments will pay for all the costs to maintain the interior and the exterior improvements. And that's how it's been all these years, right? A few years ago, we performed an audit of the districts and things have changed, meaning the assessment districts can no longer support exterior improvements. And that's just because of court cases, propositions, and all these different things. So the exterior improvements, and when I mean exterior, I mean things outside of your community. So if we go back to the map, it will be on the far edge here, and these main roads, right? Not inside of your community. Those improvements are currently being maintained by the city through the general fund, which obviously they're not doing a really good job because the general fund doesn't really have that much money. But the interior improvements remain in the assessment districts. So let's talk about those for a second. At the Pointe, if you're at the Pointe, you're receiving a service level C, right? And in here, you can see what is being covered. Only the trees, the shrubs, and the ground cover. In Wingfield and Wingfield West, they're both receiving a level service B. A little later on in the presentation, I will talk about service levels and what that means. The highest level is level A. The lowest level is level F. So being at B is actually pretty good. C is not so good, right? This tells you how many units are in each of these landscaping districts, basically your communities. And then this is the monthly rate that you're paying for your assessment district. In the case of the Pointe, it has been the same amount since 1996. There's no provision for an inflator. The city cannot increase your assessment, and it's essentially $110 flat every year, even though costs are going up, which is why the service level is dropping. So as costs continue to increase, this 110 cannot be raised. This is what you will pay and continue to pay. The only thing that can happen is for the city to reduce the level of service. I'll show a couple of numbers here. These two in bold right here, this total assessment is what 110, which is the max, produces for the Pointe, $24,000. And this annual cost of 20 is what a level C of service is. So frankly, another water increase, and this service level is going to need to drop to D. So we are right there at the edge of the next level, which D is very bad. So that's for the interior, inside track, right? Once you go inside of the neighborhood. For Wingfield, with a level B, the payment is, the maximum is $393. Currently, the levies are very, very low at $51. And that's because Wingfield does have an accumulation of funds. You can see here, the estimated balance for the end of June of 2021 is $310,000, where in the case of the Pointe, the estimated balance at the end of this fiscal year is going to be only 21, which essentially covers a 1 year's maintenance, right? That's not the case for Wingfield. So Wingfield is actually in pretty good shape. Wingfield West has only $24,000 projected for the end of the year, and it does have quite a bit of room in the maximum. So it's doing okay, but very soon it's going to start eating away on that on the balance, because the costs also, as you can see, are very, very close. $22,000 assessment. So that means this assessment of $539 is going to have to go up in order to keep up. So Wingfield West has a few years. Again, this is only for the interior improvements, nothing on the exterior, right? Nothing outside of your community on the main roads. So all the medians and parkways, they are not part of your assessment districts. So I want to reinforce that the assessment districts were formed at the time of your development. So this is back in 96, 2005, and 2006, depending on the community that you're in. The intention was from the get-go that you, through assessments, will fund all the improvements, the maintenance of the improvements in the interior and the exterior of your communities. And so that's how it's been all this time, right? I'm gonna go to the next slide. So that's just your assessment district. On the other hand, you do pay property taxes, right? You pay the assessment plus a lot more in your property tax bill. So let's talk about the 1% ad valorem. The 1% tax is the biggest item in your tax bill. It is 1%, is based on the value of your home. So not the current market value, but when you bought the home on the 2% inflator as prescribed, what we call Proposition 13, right? So if you've been at your home for a long time, this part of your tax bill is definitely not as large as it is for many other people who may have purchased a home recently. So I'll give you a little bit of that. The way that works, the 1% is based on what we call tax rate areas, right? Every area may have a different tax rate area. Every tax rate area has a different rate. Okay, so if we look at the Pointe, which has just one tax rate area in it. And these are actually from I actually went into the database, the county database, and looked at your properties, your tax rate areas, and your numbers. These are all real properties in the neighborhoods, right? The city share from the Pointe is 19 cents on the dollar. So let's go over that real quick. What that means is if we pick this home in the middle, the homes at the Pointe go from mid 200s to high 600s. So in the table, I included from 290,000 all the way up to 682. Obviously, you're not going to find a home there for 290,000 right now. That means that's a resident who's been there for a long, long time, right? And is getting assessed at that rate. So that's not common, right? So let's talk about something in the middle range, maybe a home worth 535,000. So if you own a home in the Pointe for $535,000, and that's your assessed value, you're paying a 1% tax to the county of $5,300, right? And that's a lot of money. It really is. But what happens with that is the city only gets $1,000 of that $5,000. And I'm going to go back and show you the schools, your community colleges, the county, and every other district gets the rest, right? Remember, the city only gets 18 cents on the dollar if you're on the Pointe, right? So from your 5,000 and 1% property tax, they get 1,000. The first thing that happens is they have to pay for police and fire. City of Oxnard has a cost for public safety of 65%. That's their budget, right? So of the $140 million, 65% of it immediately goes to public safety. That is not uncommon. So I know it sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it is very, very typical. This is the case for almost every city in California, right? It's between 60 and 70%. Interesting point is that in the survey, we heard that public safety is a major concern. So it kind of sounds like even at 65%, it's not enough, right? It should be higher, right? Because apparently there's a concern that you're not getting enough public safety. But it is 65% right now. So we take that off the top. That means that from the $1,000 from this home worth $535,000 who paid $5,300, 1,000 goes to the city, 467 of that goes to police, 152 goes to fire, only $400 remain. In this case, the $400 is for everything else the city provides, other than water, trash, and sewer, right? That's separate. That's a different enterprise. So we're talking about many, many departments, $419, which is about $35 a month. The highest house I could find, highest value house, is in Wingfield West for $810,000, right? That's the value the county shows. Probably worth more now because the county is behind and, who knows when they bought it. So the tax bill on that, at least the 1% alone, is $8,100. So this is the very, very extreme. City will get from $8,100, $1,400. By the time they pay police and fire, in this case, out of the $8,000 this home paid in the 1% tax, only $576 is left for the city to run all of the operations, other than police and fire, water, sewer, and trash, which is separate, right? That's $48 a month. We look at things like electricity bills, cable. It really doesn't seem like a lot of money in context with all the utilities that you pay and really the services that you're expecting from the city, right? So let's take a look at those services. Again, the breakdown of the budget for Oxnard is $140 million general fund budget. $63 million goes to police from that, 22 fire. There's $57 million left. Immediately, you have your admin departments, attorneys, clerk, council manager, billing, finance, all the stuff that service, $23 million, it's gone. Then you have community development, cultural, community services, and housing. So library is in there. It's $21 million out. What's left for what we're talking about tonight, which is your landscaping, streets, lighting, all the stuff that you see, right? Sidewalks. It's about $13 million to fund the whole public works department. So $13 million is not for your neighborhood, that's for the whole city. That covers all the parks, their fleet, all the facilities, every street, every tree, every median, everything in the city. This is really what is left for the city to maintain everything you see on a daily basis when you're driving and when you're walking around your communities. Let's take a closer look. So with that, we know that the city has about 453 miles of streets to maintain. They're not in good shape. Your index, which we call the PCI index, it's really how they measure pavement, is last I saw is around 60, 59 or so. Well, anything between 50 and 55 is going downhill from there. If you get low to that point where you're at 50 or under, water starts seeping into the point that you cannot really just maintain it with an overlay. You're actually going to cause real damage and real costs. So in order to maintain the level of street status that you have, right, how good or bad they look for you, it costs about $11 million a year to do that. In order to improve it, it will be about $15 million, right? It's a lot of money that the city really doesn't have. So we take a look at that and go, well, you look at your street in front of your house, let's say, and it looks pretty bad. What does that really cost? Because in theory, it sounds like, oh, you just go out there and put some asphalt, no big deal, right? It really is not like that. To do what we call a thin maintenance overlay, which is a 1-inch cover, look at these neighborhoods. This is from 2017. City did La Colonia for $1.3 million. That's the cost. We want to look at Victoria from the south end to the north side of the city. It was $1.4 million. Remember, you're not rebuilding a street here. You're literally putting a 1-inch overlay. That's all you're doing. Costs a lot of money. What other things? So maintaining streets is a problem for the city. They just don't have the funds to do it. They also have parks, 53 parks for 370 acres to maintain. Very, very expensive to maintain. 48 city sports courts, of which 27 need to be restored for a total of about $4 million. So this is very recent. This all came from the 5-year capital improvement program presented to council by the city manager in April of 2020, right? Overall, the city needs $470 million to repair, restore, and improve its infrastructure throughout, okay? Pretty much everything else, which it doesn't have, right? It's not even close. That doesn't even include the $41 million worth of fleet of vehicles that the city has on its fleet to maintain. So that's not even included in this program. A few other things I just want to highlight for you. I know the mediums are parkways. These are the exterior improvements. So you go out of your neighborhood on the middle of the road, alongside of your community, horrible shape. Those trees, in fact, many limbs are falling on the middle of the road. They are currently on a 60-year trimming cycle. That's effectively what they are on, which is absolutely unacceptable. Trees, you cannot maintain them. You cannot trim them every 60 years. That's just not possible. But you have 129 acres of that to maintain throughout the city. You got 56,000 trees in the city worth $163 million. 1,100 of them are dead. They need to be removed. In the trimming cycle, like I said, currently where the funding the city has is 60 years. Ideally, you want to be around 5 years or less, but I mean, gosh, 60 will take 10 years, will take 8 years, will take anything. So the tree trimming program in the city is currently on a sort of an emergency state. You call because a tree is falling, and that's basically what they're doing. They're sort of behind schedule, just trying to cut whatever is in danger, right? And that's sort of the state of those trees at the moment for lack of funding. Again, this is applicable to the whole city, the exterior improvements to the whole city. Measure E was recently passed. This was a sales tax increase. And so this is a valid question, right? There's going to be some money coming in. And indeed, there will be money coming in. I'm not sure how much you're going to get this year because of COVID. Remember, sales tax is impacted by COVID. There's been a lot of delays. And so I'm not really sure how it's going to look like. But eventually, we're going to go back to normal. In there, and you can see we got this from the city manager's office. City manager made a presentation to council on September 22nd, 2020. There is an item there for restoring landscaping services. So it's very possible that over time, there will be some money coming from Measure E to improve the tree trimming, the mediums, the parkways, and all that kind of stuff. There is, however, a lot of other needs on this board. You can see on the slide, pretty much everything at the city needs money. As I mentioned on the previous slide, there are about $400 million worth of things to do. So part of this effort is for you as community members try to figure out, do you want to wait for Measure E money if it's ever going to happen? Or is this an effort that we want to undertake and find a solution between now and then? The way Melrose districts work, so let's say we were to form some sort of a new district to fund additional improvements or to restore the improvements you have, we can set up a sunset with a renewal process. There's a lot of things we can do, meaning we don't have to create a thing that lasts forever. We can create a solution that bridges the gap. Let's say 7 years from now, we get to this point and Measure E did not pan out, so there's no money from Measure E coming, then you're in pretty good shape, right? We just renew. And you keep maintaining or doing what you've been doing, right? Assuming that we get a Melrose in place. If Measure E money's there, then it may not get renewed, right? We may have Measure E money. So I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind, that where Measure E money is coming, there's a lot of needs. So I'm not really sure when it's going to come, but we can always devise a temporary solution, something interim, and sort of play along with Measure E and see what happens, right? I mentioned earlier that whatever we do is going to be handled and managed by the Special Districts Division. And I mentioned that because it is important you make a distinction between the services you're getting from the rest of the city than what you're getting from the Special Districts Division. The Special Districts Division currently provides your services up to the levels that I described earlier, level C, B, and B, right? For the interior, the stuff inside of your neighborhood once you enter, whatever is in there. And sometimes it's not much, but that's being provided by the Special Districts Division. That's a small group. So you can see here on the board, you can call Jerry, you have people that you can call at any time, and you can get a response. You can use 311, which is a built-in system the city uses to place a request, which will be handled by Jerry and her staff. With the city, it's a very large organization. So I feel that whatever solution we come up with here should be limited and handled by this small group so that you can hold them accountable. You have a very, very direct relationship one-to-one, since you're paying extra, right, to receive services. You're paying things that other people in the city are not paying for. So I just wanted to bring that up to you. Please make sure that when you interact with the city, we make a distinction between, say, oh, the city is doing this versus the Special Districts Division is doing this, right? So let's look at this geographical area. Again, this is not final in any way. In fact, what we're trying to do right now is to gather involvement and for you to meet with your neighbors and figure out, okay, how far out should we go? If you want to make a change, if you want to improve it, if you want to leave it alone, that's fine too, right? Areas of concern that in my mind, when I looked at the map, I figured that anything along Victoria will be nice to capture. Possibly things along 5th, right? Obviously here on Patterson Road that dissects the community. These are what I will say are what I consider exterior improvements, right? The stuff inside is much easier to talk about, right? So it's easier to relate to, right? You may want to expand this. You may want to contract this, this area. It really is up to you. Remember, what you're looking for if you want to move forward is something that can be supported by 2/3, right? If it's 2/3, the greater the group, the more difficult that becomes, right? So you can kind of figure out, okay, what area do we want to improve? And then where can we get support for it, right? So that's sort of a give and take a little bit. I'll show you a satellite view. You can see here going all the way from Victoria to back all the way up to Jolly Roger Way along Dunkirk and all the way down to Transom Way, right? Okay. And down to what they call Seaview Estates, right? So this is sort of the preliminary area. Again, nothing final. These lines are not very meaningful yet because really we only have about 22 participants here today of about 400 homes that we included in this meeting. So clearly we have a lot of work to do to engage the community and figure out where to draw these lines. So what did we hear from you? In the survey, so some of you took the survey, not everybody, but many of you did. We asked about, can you tell us in order of importance to you what things matter, right? What would you like to see change? So I have underlined the things that we can work on tonight and we talk about, but before I do that, I want to let Danielle talk to you a little bit about public safety and homelessness, because it come up high on every survey, and it's somewhat different from what we can do through the processes that we have for this ReNew Oxnard program. So I'll let Danielle go ahead and cover that.
Okay, so like as Pablo mentioned, the items that are underlined are ones that we see this program can address. And that's mainly because through volunteer efforts and funding from your communities, these items can give a good return. Public safety, which is at the top of everyone's priority in their neighborhood, doesn't give you as good of a one-on-one return. So if we were to say we want to use funding to pay for public safety, those funds aren't going to get you an extra officer that's dedicated specifically to your community, right? So some of these other items that we're looking at can do that. When you give funds towards maintenance of the landscaping inside the community, it goes directly towards your community, and you can see that's not spread throughout the city. I do think that it's very important though, and the police department has a number of programs available to you that the citizens committee in your neighborhood can rely on and use to help with public safety. So while we're not talking about it as a solution here tonight, as in regards to the funding portion, I do think that it's still very important, and we will have links to the public safety programs on civicmic.com that you can find, as well as homelessness. You can see that link there at the bottom. The city has a number of agencies and programs that you can reach out to help with members of the community who are displaced. And, you know, we've seen a lot of good results for communities that have members dedicated to reaching out to these programs and calling these numbers once they see that there may be an individual or maybe an encampment starting somewhere within or right outside their neighborhood. So I think that they're really important still to address. And same there with the traffic and some of the safety issues that falls into public safety, and the bike lanes throughout the city. All of those items, we can't really get funding. Funding wouldn't be a one-to-one benefit for you. So that would be some volunteer work you can do with some of those, but you wouldn't see the same results. So those are the resources we'll provide to you with the Citizens Committee that we will be forming. Hopefully some of you will join tonight. We can still talk about those and make sure that you have the resources and you can share them with your community, but we're not going to go into detail on those tonight, and that's why.
All right, thank you, Danielle. So on this slide, which came, the data here came from your responses to our survey. The way the scoring system works is the lower the number you see at the far end in parentheses, the more important that was to you, right? The more of a need. So the number one item was maintenance of the landscaping inside of the community. That's what the responses said. Again, for the Pointe, that makes total sense. The Pointe is receiving an inside service of a level C. For the Wingfield communities, level B. Well, as I presented earlier, I believe it was Wingfield West, may soon be, in a year or two, maybe also a level C. So clearly, that was at the top of your list. Public safety was second. Third was the maintenance of nearby parks. Makes sense because the Parks Division at the city has really does not have a lot of funding. Last I saw, I believe, was about $1 million. From that, $13 million allocated to public works. And as I mentioned, there's about over 50-something parks, over 300 acres to maintain. It's impossible for the city without money to maintain parks to any high level of maintenance, right? Street lighting inside and outside the surrounding the community was fourth. Definitely something we can help with through this effort as well as the maintenance of nearby parks. The maintenance of the streets inside and outside, that cannot be done with the assessment district that you have currently, but it's something we can help with through this process. Something to note is assessment districts are very, very unique in the way they work, right? So unlike a Melrose, which, you can, there's different names for it, but I think that's the name that everybody kind of knows. That type of funding has a very long and flexible list of improvements that you can do with. This is by law. It's not something that the city gets to pick. In fact, I would not want it to be that way. I would like for things to be easier, but nothing is easy in property taxation, not in the state of California anyway. I lived in Georgia for a while, and it's incredibly easier over there, not here. It's not California. So in California, if you have an assessment district, by law, it tells you exactly what it can pay for, right? It's very limited. For example, your maintenance districts right now can only pay for landscaping and lighting type improvements. Streets do not fall under that. If you want to do anything with streets, you will have to form a different type of assessment district, something we call a benefit assessment district on the 1982 Act. That means that you will have two separate proceedings, two separate ballots, two separate charges, two fully separately set of documents and processes for the city, in this case, a special districts division. And overall, administratively, it's going to cost you more money. You, in an assessment district world, you end up forming many of them to pay for a whole bunch of things. So not very helpful. So, but in a Melrose, you can include parks, you can include the landscaping, you can include the lighting, the streets, pretty much everything in here, sidewalks, graffiti, your pergola with the mailboxes, all that can be included in one solution, one funding mechanism. In fact, a CFD can also, or a Melrose, that's the same thing, can pay for capital improvements, where you could not do that with a single assessment district. So if you wanted to build something, that will be a way to do that. So that's the list here. Everything underlined that I mentioned is things that can be solved if we all work together and we gather that 2/3 approval rate, right? From the survey, I'm not sure if you have an HOA in place or not, but we asked the question, do you see a homeowners association as part of the solution? And there is support for that. So while working with you through this process, we need to kind of ascertain what you have in terms of an HOA. And if you are interested in forming one, that's something that we can work with as well. So that's something we can help you with and work with the city on setting up an agreement for an HOA to maintain some or all of the improvements, right? We asked about are you willing to help in the sense of volunteering? And 51% of you said yes. In my head, I envision some sort of a component between the citizens committee that needs to be formed, which we can call a landscaping committee, if you like to call it that way. And the city and that committee will have to work together on an ongoing basis to determine what level of involvement there is going to be on a yearly basis from the citizens in regards to maintenance, right? So it needs to be coordinated every year. So this is what we heard from you. These are the things we heard from you on the survey. We mentioned defined levels of service earlier, so I'm going to talk about that when we use the letters B, C, F, right? Things like that. So for a point of reference, the full description of the service levels can be found in our data center. But as a summary, just something quickly to remember. So let's talk about mowing, aging, and trimming. A level service A means weekly, okay? So when the city bids the contract for the various districts, the city bids it based on the amount of money available, right? So the city asks for a level A, B, C, D, F pricing, and whatever you can afford is what the city is able to engage. A level is weekly, B level is every 2 weeks. So if you're at the Pointe, you're every 3rd week. If you're in Wingfield, it's every 2 weeks. So you should see the contractor in your neighborhood every 2 weeks if you're in Wingfield, every 3rd week if you're at the Pointe, right? Yeah, remember the Pointe is on level C already, soon to be a level D with the next water increase. Water increases happen routinely. They do not follow cost of living rules at all. Water goes up 13%, 20%. I cannot figure out what the formula is, if there's any, but The moment we have a rate increase, it will be large, and the point will probably fall down to level D, which is a monthly service. That means you're not going to have anybody there until every month, like once a month. That's it. We do have communities in Oxnard currently in level F, which is very, very bad. It's quarterly. Most importantly, on a level F, there's no trash or debris removal at all performed by the contractor. So this is very important that you keep track of these things and know how often the contractor should be there. And really, it's a way that kind of work towards a solution that, in my view, you want to go for level A, because, like I said, water doesn't follow inflators. If we were to create a Melrose and set up an inflator, the highest inflator most likely you will approve is 2%. In my experience, 3% a year is a high inflator that is now well supported. Maybe we get lucky, but I'm going to shoot for 2, right? So let's say we start at level A at a 2% increase every year to keep up with rising costs. Well, water doesn't follow those rules. Water rate it will increase much greater than that. And so your level A of service over the years is going to drop to level B, to level C, and we don't know how far we go, but that's why it's great. We should start as high as possible so that we can maintain those levels as long as possible, because there are things that we cannot control, like water rate increases. So desired outcomes, what are we looking for to come out from this effort? Well, currently you're paying to have trees, shrubs, and ground cover taken care of at those levels of service, which are good in some cases, not so good in others. But we want to include all of that, right? Obviously, we want to capture what you currently have. We want to make sure that whatever outcome comes out of this effort is managed by the Special Districts Division so that you can hold somebody accountable, right? And with that, we want to add some transparency, ongoing transparency and communications, right? Because currently I know that a lot of people are like, well, where's my money going? What am I getting for it? And it's really, really difficult for the city to put out these reports, which are very complicated for people to see. But so we want to, as part of this effort, we want to incorporate some solutions for that, right? We want to make sure that you can see at all times what's happening, what level of service you're getting, what the fund balances are, and what the future looks like. We want to improve what you have. And in cases, you have to rehabilitate that. Some of the materials are not in good shape, so some of the plants and trees need to be maybe removed, replaced. But we want to do that and bring it to a service level A, ideally, in the inside and the outside. We want to capture all the mediums, the parkways, and the perimeter. That's what, in my mind, looks like an optimal solution, right? You create a block, an area of Oxnard that when you approach it, which is, these are your communities, it looks better than the rest of the city. Currently, if you drive through the city, you'll see medians and parkways that are in really disrepair. So creating a nice large block, in my view, is sort of great, because you can see that, you get a sense of community, and this is where you live. The value of your homes depends on that. So ideally, we want to capture as much as we can so that we can create a large area that looks really, really nice. Through this effort, we obviously need to figure out what new improvements we need to add. There's some maybe things that are not currently covered that you want to include. And the most important thing is to create an ongoing citizen committee, a group that will remain involved through the years, right? You don't have to meet every month, but maybe twice a year, 3 times a year, and then meet with the city to make sure that you know where everything is at and how things are going with your solution, whatever the solution may be. Transparency is very important. One of the things we want to propose is that we create some sort of a dashboard. You're now familiar with dashboards because we have all seen them for COVID. Some sort of a online place where you can quickly see the numbers, what the fund balances are, what level of service you're getting, what does the budget look like? Does it look like you're going to be in trouble? Have all the detail that you need as citizens who are paying for this extra level of service to feel comfortable with that, right? So we want to build that in. These are things that we will work with the Citizens Committee to determine what things you want to see there, right? I listed a few things here, but this is just top of my head, things that I thought will be helpful to you, but we can build pretty much anything. What do new improvements, what does that mean, right? When we talk about possible new improvements? Well, currently you do not have lighting cover, right? You said that's something that matters to you. So we can get some pricing on what it will cost to include lighting. Sidewalks. I know sidewalk repair is a problem. Many of the the roots are lifting those sidewalks. I understand some of the areas do not have the pergolas and mailboxes included. Would like to consider that. Graffiti removal, the street resurfacing and maintenance, the street sweeping, the maintenance of the nearby parks. Maybe you need some capital improvements nearby. There may be some traffic related improvements. I hear a lot about mufflers and cars racing on the road. Well, with that mellow, you can do speed bumps, right? That may be something you want to do. We can get costs for that and put it in the budget and figure out what that looks like. And some other capital improvements that you may want to do just when we're looking at all the solutions and maybe want to include in the package deal. Ultimately, the most important thing is ongoing citizen support and involvement, right? We cannot get to 2/3 without your support. We need you to talk to your neighbors. Everybody needs to be on board. It's important that you all understand where the money is going currently, what the city can and cannot do, and work together to figure out, okay, what kind of solution do we want to have, if any, right? Things that we see happening from possibly a citizen group, not all these things, but maybe some of the groups want to do seasonal projects like, a trash cleanup day or a replanting day, which will be coordinated with the Special Districts Division. There may be that opportunity from some communities to mobilize some assets. Maybe there's people in your community that are landscapers and things like that, right? That can provide services at a discount, or I don't know, this different things that maybe there's sharing of expertise, right? In other communities, we know we have people who know people at nonprofit organizations, and that there's a willingness there for that organization to come in and provide some free services, right? There's things like that, create a partnership. But the most important thing, at a minimum, what we do need is a standing citizen committee. Without it, there's absolutely no chance whatsoever for this to succeed. And that's important. Let me give you an example. So like I said, the city really can't increase your property taxes. That's not possible with Proposition 218, Proposition 13, and Proposition 26. It is very, very difficult for the city to do anything without going to a vote. So a citizen committee will be the only way we can reach out and be able to talk to everybody, get them in these meetings, work through the budget together, and make sure that we address everybody's questions and concerns so we have any chance to achieve that 2/3. We cannot proceed with the formation of a district, let's say, if we don't have that comfort level, because to form a Melrose is going to cost about $35,000 or so, right? Give or take. That's money that will come from your funds. So Danielle, Jerry, and I have already talked that we are not going to push forward any community, any group in the city to form a district until we can ascertain that there's 2/3 support. Because all that will do if we move forward is to waste your money, right? You're going to get ballots. It's going to go down in flames, and we will have spent $35,000 for nothing. And honestly, you have greater needs for much better use of the $35,000. So this process is all about your involvement. Without your involvement, we cannot get there, and we're not moving forward to spend any more of your money than we need to until we get that. Okay. What do the next steps look like? Well, creation of the Citizens Committee is number one. If you want to volunteer, please volunteer. Please email Danielle at dwood@civicmic.com. This is all going to be on the website in a couple of days or a few days, give or take. But in the meantime, it's dwood@civicmic.com if you want to volunteer, and I hope you do. So that's the number one thing. Once we have that in place, we can provide support to this group of citizens so that the Citizens Committee can go out and perform outreach and reach out and grab everybody and make sure they come into the next meeting. Because in the meantime, we're going to be working with the Special Districts Division and creating some basic budgets, right? We talked about the exterior improvements, the interior. How much is that? We don't know. We're going to have to work with the city and come up with a budget, run some numbers so we can present that to you at the next meeting if there is greater participation. Ultimately, that process is going to continue to happen, right? We're going to meet with the committee. We're going to meet with you. We're going to go, okay, the numbers are this, it includes this, or it doesn't include that. What does that look like? We may do a survey. We may change things around and keep doing that until we find a happy medium. Those are the next steps. Okay. So, Danielle, maybe we're going to do some questions now, right?
Yeah, so we have a number of comments and some questions. For those individuals that are on the phone, I'm going to just read through some of these, even though Jerry's answered some of them. And then we can answer others if they weren't answered, and then we can go to additional questions. So Carmen, I'm at the point they don't even maintain the trees. I've called several times to get them to address the issue of the roots lifting all the way to the top. I can no longer put grass or anything there. Jerry responded that the trees are an authorized improvement within LMD 25. The district does not generate enough funding for annual tree maintenance. And then Carmen asked if we could just remove the trees in this case. And someone else asked, Chris asked if we're talking about the trees in addition to those in the median. Jerry said, unfortunately, no, please email me at jerry.cooper, C-O-O-P-E-R @oxnard.org, and I will have our inspector come out and see what we can do within the limits we have to improve your tree. Then the city, Nelson says the city has never trimmed the trees in at our curbs in 14 years. They let the entrance landscaping die. Was an audit done of the city employees, workers, and supervisors on how they spend their time and money? Jerry or Pablo, would you like to respond to that?
So I can speak to a portion of that. If we're speaking about the entrance to the property that comes off of 5th Street, that is still general benefit area, which means it is maintained by the General Fund Parks Department. You can go to the special district's website, and I did put the link within the chat box, and it will show you maps of your specific landscape maintenance district and what is covered in that landscape maintenance district. You'll see that there are maintenance areas in red, along with landscaping and hardscaping. And then if trees, there you go, Danielle's got it up on the screen to show you. So in LMD 25, you'll see that it's just a small portion over there off of Dunkirk. And then trees are authorized improvement. However, due to funding availability, we do not have funding for annual tree maintenance because of that capped inflator. So we can see what we can do if you like Carmen's situation. But as of right now, we do not anticipate any annual tree maintenance within the district because of the number of trees and the amount of cost. Right now, to do a full tree maintenance on the number of trees that are within that district would probably cost us $40,000 to $50,000.
And I think you only have about $20-something thousand available from the
Correct.
assessments. Yeah. And the fund balance is another 20. So in essence, you don't have enough to do it. You'll have to stop everything and you wipe everything out.
Correct.
It's a 2 years worth of assessments. What I have on the screen right now for those on the phone, this is why it's so important that you visit our website, CivicMic.com. The city also has this data. City has a website dedicated to the Special Districts Division with all of this. But I think you should really take a minute because this really illustrates what I was mentioning earlier. At the data center, we have maybe too much information. So take your time. Don't try to read it all in one day. Go through it, email us. We'll explain it to you, right? Because there's so much in there. But one of the things you definitely want to look at are these maps of improvements. I'm going to close this real quick. Again, this is the data center. If you go to CivicMic.com, very easy. Let me do it for you. You visit the site. You look at communities, Oxnard, data center from the drop-down menu. Very easy. Scroll down because there's a lot of information. These are your maintenance levels. You want to see inspection reports, fund balances, annual reports, very, very large documents that are very, very boring, even to us. And I've been doing it for almost 30 years. So I recommend that you take your time with that one. You have district facts. These are spreadsheets that show you for every district, like Wingfield West here on the screen, when it was formed, does it have an inflator, and the service level that it's getting, things like that. There's a lot of good information, but probably the most important, most useful to you are these maps of improvements that we have, right? You can scroll down and just gonna go to 25, right there, the point. And this is why I say you have to really make a distinction between the city and the special districts division. The special districts division handles your maintenance district money, right? What you're paying for. So when you say, well, we call the city and they never show up to trim this or that, well, is it really something that you're paying for through your assessment district, or is it something that you get from the Parks Division? The Parks Division the Parks Division service level is on a 1-year schedule. What that means is you're looking at a median or a parkway in the city. They're going to that median on parkway once a year. Okay. Imagine if you did that with your grass in front of your house, your lawn, once a year. Your medians, I'm going to repeat that, through the whole city, the medians on parkways, other than those in a Melrose district already, and you do have those communities that are already paying for a Melrose, and those medians are included there. But for assessment district communities, the medians on parkways, the perimeter, the outside of your community, is not in the maintenance district and is handled on a once-a-year schedule. So if you call and it happens to be something not handled by your assessment district, it's on a once-a-year schedule. That's why you want to look at this map and see, is it something that Jerry is responsible for? Now, if Jerry is not doing a good job, you call her and you let her know, okay? And you tell her, look, I looked at the map and this is what I'm calling about. And as she said, for the Pointe, these are the trees inside. They should be maintained. As she explained, there's just not enough money to cover that trimming, right? If she did that, she will wipe out all your funds, a full year's worth of assessments. There'll be nothing left to do, right? So it's important that you visit and look at these maps so that you can make that distinction, because it really is not the same level of service and it's separate funds, separate things, right? Okay, sorry, Danielle, go ahead and continue.
That's okay. Perfect. Thank you. There is a question about where the funds that the Oxnard Harbor District pays the city each year, where those funds are used. And I believe that that is for, was discussed that that's for roads, and Jerry provides street paving is determined by a number of factors. You can look at the capital improvement plan from 2020 to 2025 for larger projects. And she provided a link here for that.
And I can say I don't have an answer for where the harbor district funding goes. That's not part of special assessment districts for the city of Oxnard.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Same person said, I bought in this neighborhood because it didn't have Melrose. Our neighborhood doesn't require a lot. We don't have a park. We only have an entrance with landscaping, lights, city trees, and roads. That is understandable. Patterson definitely needs speed bumps because people keep running right through the roundabout there. I believe later I read other people saying we don't need speed bumps.
So I can tell you that the city is no longer authorizing speed bumps within the city because of public safety response times. So when speed bumps are put into neighborhoods, it limits the police and fire when they need to get to you in an emergency. That doesn't mean that we can't look at other efforts to slow cars down, but speed bumps in particular are not being authorized because of that. We want to make sure that you have good response time if there is an emergency for you. And I did put in the chat box as well that if you have times that you are seeing significant high-speed driving within your neighborhood and on specific streets, please let me know because I will work with your beat coordinator to see what we can do to get some additional patrols or parked police vehicles to see if we can stop those recurring culprits that are making your neighborhoods a little less safe.
Thank you. I think there's another comment here, and I was going to say this about the speed bumps, though not an option. It's interesting to see some of you say that you need them and then others say you don't. And then as I'm reading here, the same thing. I agree with the above. I bought in this neighborhood because it did not have an HOA or a Melrose. We have people who live in the community that can help us maintain the areas over the top to put a Melrose. So that's what the city's looking to find out through a citizens committee. We'd like you to volunteer if you are supporting a Melrose or if you're supporting community participation, community cleanup, or you're supporting both, or you're not supporting either. We'd like your participation in the committee so we can determine who the majority of what the majority of the community does support, because you may have a different opinion than your neighbor. And we started these meetings because we have heard from members of the community who are not satisfied with the improvements around the community and in the community. But the city has determined, instead of just trying to move forward and listen to those individuals that have, you know, reached out and complained, they are looking to reach out to as many people as possible and get a larger group together to determine what the next step should be. What are the boundaries of Wingfield and Wingfield West? I believe Pablo is pulling that up now so we can see there's Wingfield West there.
Very
and
small.
Then,
I mean, Wingfield West is very small, right? And Wingfield is in here somewhere. I don't know why it's not.
I think when you have to zoom out there to get that other portion there in the middle will show Wingfield.
There you go. Wingfield is from Dunkirk. Oh, I guess where Seaview Estate starts, Naples Drive. All these maps are in the CivicMic. So if you go to the homepage, right, scroll down, you'll see this map in the somewhere halfway down, and you can actually has a bookmark. You can actually drop it, right, and select the district. You can actually just go down to Wingfield and select it, and it will zoom in there, as you can see. But Wingfield goes from Dunkirk Drive down to Naples, including the homes facing Naples Drive, and then from, I guess, Northport Lane to Freeport Lane with the homes facing. Wingfield West is to the west of that, and it's just a very small community with houses along Dunkirk and a couple of cul-de-sacs.
Thank you, Pablo. Speeding's mentioned a number of times. Again, some conversation about not allowing for the speed bumps. Once again, Jerry said if you have certain times that you know that the speeding is occurring frequently, that she can reach out to see if we can coordinate to get someone from the police department there to do some enforcement. People running the stop sign, same thing, that's how it would be handled. More comments about not wanting an HOA or a Melrose. And again, you know, that, so this may not be your community, or all of these communities that we're talking tonight may be okay with staying status quo, how you are now, or some people may be in support of paying an additional amount, but it depends on what the amount looks like. So
I think it's important to cover that real quick, because I know that I myself live in the middle of nowhere, away from civilization as much as I can. And I definitely do not want an HOA. In fact, we have a street maintenance agreement in this street, which I'm hoping to never have to deal with. So I know there's people that have those preferences, right? Of course, my road looks pretty bad because it's in the middle of nowhere in a town called Fallbrook in the hills. And it's beautiful. And my biggest concern are rabbits eating the cables in my car, which is very, very expensive, right? So if there was an assessment district or a mellow to handle the rabbits, I will actually pay for that, but not for anything else. But in the city of Oxnard, these communities, so Wingfield, Wingfield West, the Pointe, remember, when they were developed as a condition of development, the developer formed an assessment district with the city, which is what you currently have. It's been in place forever, right? In the case of the Pointe, the rate cannot even increase. So it has been the same rate forever while costs keep rising. So the Pointe obviously has a long-term problem, right? And a sustainability problem. The Wingfield districts are in better shape, though eventually it's gonna catch up with you as well, right? You don't have an HOA, you don't want an HOA, you don't want a mellow, fine. These districts are going to be capped, right? Basically for the Pointe, the level is going to go on to D. It's going to approach what you see in the mediums, and the same is going to happen with Wingfield over time. Your only hope is that the city finds money in Measure E, right? For improvements to the city. But as I just showed you earlier, you can do that. You absolutely can do that. There's over $400 million worth of work to be done. There's a lot of needs in the city, not to mention the public safety is not at the best levels, right? That's going to be number one on most people's list. So through this process, this is the very same reason we have in this meeting. If you as a community get together and you talk to your neighbors and they talk to the neighbors and you come back to the second meeting, please, the sooner the better, because we don't need to have many, many meetings. And if you all agree like, hey, we just don't want to pay any extra, we don't want to do anything about this, we want to leave it as is and wait for Measure E funding someday, that's okay. That's okay. Jerry's group is limited to what they can do, right? They can only provide services up to the assessment amount that I showed in the first slide. And the service level is going to degrade over time, and you're going to be totally dependent on the general fund. The mediums on parkways and the exterior improvements are already funded by the general fund, and you can see throughout the city what that looks like, right? So the city doesn't really have the money at this point to do much with that, or much less with the streets. So I understand that people, don't want these things and don't want to pay extra. And that's an option. But I think that it's a decision that needs to be made collectively by you as a community, right?
Yeah, and there's a comment on here about Faith, I believe, says that she sees contractors working on the median and Fifth, and they do a really bad job. And just like Pablo mentioned, Jerry replied here that that is general fund maintenance. So that is what you're seeing there. There was a question about who manages the contractors, and that they've been here 14 years and have never seen trash being picked up or landscaping being done. Jerry responded that she manages the contractors for the special districts portion. And you can go to the special districts website to see the maps that show what's authorized in your district. And as Pablo showed, the same thing on CivicMic. So both of those areas, it's a good location to go and figure out if the maintenance that you're looking at is general fund or if it's something that's been paid for through this district. Let's see, no speed bumps. Okay, we're in the process of updating the maintenance calendar on the website, Jerry says. In the next week, it should be updated to see your maintenance days. Can we come up with something to prevent speeding? There's definitely options on the police department's website, as well as Jerry mentioned, sending someone out at specific times. I think just getting someone out there every once in a while makes many members of the community aware that, maybe that's not an area they can continue to speed in. So we've seen good results with that as well.
Can I address, I've seen a couple of questions like this. Maybe Jerry can help me with this one. So I hear this a lot, and I actually, I didn't really know much about this until my wife, she used to work for a general contractor, and they were doing work for cities building parks. And I just could not believe her job was she's just chief estimator, right? So she estimates, right, what the cost will be to bid on the project. To buy things like trash cans for a park, they're almost $2,000 a pop. And then you have to have that trash can installed. By the time you're done, you're installing a trash can for many thousands of dollars. I don't know if you know, but a street light, right, a traffic light, that's no less than $250,000, a simple traffic light, okay? Yeah, I bet you, I know Yoko, you're like, what? Yeah, that's what I thought. The box that controls all that, it's like a computer that for whatever reason is as much as sending somebody to NASA, I guess. I don't understand it. $250,000 for a simple light. And you can go on and on and on when you actually look under the hood of municipal costs. So I want to have this one. That's why I'm putting Wingfield West on the screen, because let me show you the maps from Wingfield West. So you look at Wingfield West, it has an entrance from 5th Street on Portofino Place. There is some landscaping there with some hardscape. It's got a couple of traffic circles inside and some more landscaping, not much. I mean, I don't even know how big that is, but it can be that big, right? Then inside you have some trees. Jerry, are you trimming all these trees currently, or?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly the last date that they were trimmed.
But they're on a regular schedule though. These are, so when we look at this map from Wingfield West, these trees and everything you see is being maintained at level B, right?
Correct.
Okay. So then
for Pablo, for districts that are at B level of service and have fund balance available for tree maintenance or have the ability to assess for tree maintenance, we are on a 2-year trim cycle.
Okay, so that's not a 2-year cycle. Okay, so that contract doesn't seem like much, right? It's $12,000. Well, by the time you put the water and everything, we're looking at closer to $15,000 a year. Okay, $15,000 a year for that little bit of work before you have city costs, right? Overhead, admin costs, and all these other things added. This budget, all this information is found in our website, right? The way I got to this budget is by looking at this post, which is under Oxnard, ReNew Oxnard News. We go into your team right here, 25, and you scroll down and you can see all these posts. One of them is the Wingfield West budget. And in there, you can see these costs. That is actually a lot more money than you probably thought. And that's how it is throughout. I know I hear this a lot. Like, well, it's not very much. It is. In the world of municipal finance, right? Everything costs a bundle. Way more than you're ever going to pay for doing this privately through your landscaper. And it's just the way it is. I described earlier what it costs to put the 1-inch overlay. $1.4 million for Victoria from south to north, 1.2 for La Colonia. Colonia is an okay community size-wise, but it's not, I mean, that's a lot of money. So I want you to keep that in mind, that you really, unless you look under the hood at what it costs, and these things are, these projects are all put out to bid. So the city, normally, Jerry, you go with the lowest bidder, right?
Correct.
Isn't that your policy? So it's hard to believe, but it does cost a lot of money. All the landscaping, all the work that the city has to do, they contract that out and it costs a bundle. If they did it in-house, it will probably cost even more.
Thank you for that, Pablo. There's questions about participation from the Oxnard School District in helping to maintain the area around the neighborhood and school in some manner because of the traffic from parents dropping off and picking up their children and how it impacts the neighborhood. Faith mentioned that she had reached out to one of the principals about keeping the landscape on Dunkirk mowed and trimmed, and they've been doing a good job. So it sounds like that is a worthwhile effort. I think that a citizens committee or a group of individuals that got together or through Jerry could contact the district instead of everyone reaching out individually, but it's definitely something that we'd want to include in this program, or you as a citizens committee could focus on doing. Then we're saying, are you saying that for LMD 25, the only current work being done is a small section at the northwest corner? Significant amount of landscaping is dead.
Yep,
So
right,
yes.
It's on Ensign Place and South Patterson Road, basically.
Yeah, so there are some dead trees that we are working to remove over there. And we may be able in fiscal year 22, so after July 1st, based on available funding, we may be able to do some replanting project there. As you know, one of the residents indicated, can we use volunteers? To save costs in some locations when we are doing projects, especially with underfunded districts, we do utilize the services of work release through the county to do some of that work as well. And that has assisted us in saving some funds for districts with regards to landscape maintenance. So.
Yeah. We have another question here about the number of survey responses versus the number of
25, I believe 26. And how many postcards do you send? 400?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah, so we sent about over 400 postcards, got 25 people to respond to the survey. And I believe at the highest point, we have 24, 25 people in here. So clearly not even close to a 2/3 support, even if we agreed on everything, right?
Right. So that's why we discussed the first step is for any movement in any direction for your community is to volunteer for the Citizens Committee, and then we can help you to provide resources to you to get your neighbors involved and get feedback from them. That way we don't have 4 people trying to make the decisions for the entire community that most likely won't be supported. And then, we're spending your time and money. So that's why the next step is really just to get more individuals in your community involved. You keep talking about improvements. Nothing has been improved at Pelican Point. They did slurry reseal in the streets a few years ago, but that is maintenance, not improvements. An improvement would be replant the entrance landscaping because it's all dead.
That's probably my fault. So let me clarify. In the world of public finance where we come from, an improvement refers to your landscaping, your streets, sidewalks, streets, pretty much parks. That is an improvement. It's called a public improvement. The distinction is important because government cannot fund private improvements, right? So that's how we got there. So my bad. When we talking about improvements, we mean things that could be building something or maintaining something or servicing something that is a public improvement. So it doesn't mean that things are being improved. It's just that is the noun in general for sidewalks, parks, streets, you name it. Police and fire is a service, right? And so you build capital improvement, you build things, you maintain improvements. So landscaping, in your case, is both a capital improvement sometimes and then a maintenance improvement, right? Even if it's bad, it's still an improvement. So even when it's in bad shape, it's still a public improvement. Does that make sense? So my bad.
Right. There's a question if the neighbors can get together and paint a mailbox, Jerry.
I would have to check with the U.S. Postal Service because technically mailboxes are the property of USPS. I don't see why it would be an issue, but let me go ahead and reach out to USPS and see if they have any problems with it.
And Jerry, to clarify, my understanding is, and I may be wrong, but though it is their property, it is not maintained by them, right? Somebody has to pay for it, right?
I don't know. I think that's kind of a sticky wicket because I know that a number of years ago, a prior manager went through a situation with getting some mailboxes replaced, and it was.
Was this in De La Rosa?
I don't remember.
Because there we ended up, maintenance is you pay for those.
Yeah.
That's when I encountered that. Yeah, it was their property. We couldn't touch it. But if we did, we have to pay for it. It was kind of like, okay, but they wouldn't maintain it. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. So let me reach out to USPS and see what I can find out on that one.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. So let's go ahead and open up some questions to those on the phone that maybe are not using the chat, or if you're on, if you're online and you just don't want to use the chat, that's fine as well. Go ahead and unmute and say your name, and then we'll take questions. Here I have Alicia.
Yeah, I just unmuted, figured that's easier.
Perfect.
So I have a couple questions. The the property tax numbers that were shown earlier, looks like it's just the 1% ad valorem tax. And it doesn't even list that we pay an extra Carmen override tax. We're only one of 24 cities that does that. And we pay extra sales tax called Measure O, and just passed an extra sales tax called Measure E, which puts us at the highest city imposed sales tax rate in the state. And I mean, Measure E was mentioned, but it was kind of downplayed as you shouldn't expect funds from this very soon, but that's $45 million a year. And at the same meeting as that slide that was on the screen earlier with Measure E services, the mayor sat on the dais and told the public, if you're happy with what maintenance of the landscape is right now, then fine, don't vote for Measure E. But if you want improvements, you got to vote for this. And as soon as it's passed, the residents are asked, okay, well, maybe you need to pay a little more for landscaping. So, you know, I feel like kind of a moving target is being proposed here. If you do this, we'll fix your maintenance. Well, now we're going to move the goalpost a little further down the field. Now you got to pay something else. And so I'm not sure that residents feel all that trust that they're going to get what they're told they're getting.
Yeah, and I understand, Alicia. Some of the things you're listed. Yeah. So when I pick these numbers, I use the 1% because it is what most people think of when they see their property taxes, right? The big number they see there. There are additional items that your maintenance assessment district, if you have one, is there. If you have a Melrose, you have some other measures that were previously passed. Those things normally come with strings or attached, right? So they were approved for a certain specific type of maintenance improvement or some dedicated funding. Whatever that may be that you're paying for, it is obviously not going currently to the medians, the parkways, because if it did, they would look a lot better, right? So what we're trying to do is not to account for everything here because we never can do that, but rather look at what most commonly funds the general fund, which is the 1%. So yeah, there's a lot more in your property tax bill that you pay for. And most of the time it's limited, right? It's restricted to certain uses, right? And not currently being used to pay for any of these improvements. The slide on Measure E has, yes, a lot of needs in there. The numbers I heard were 30 million, maybe it is 45 million. I don't personally think you're gonna see any of that anytime soon, given COVID and everything else, right? I don't think the past year has been great for sales tax, but eventually maybe. And this process is not about, this is the only way, the only solution, right? Yes, if you as a group of property owners want to take the position, hey, we're going to wait for Measure E, right? We approve Measure E. We're going to go to council. We're going to meet with the mayor and everybody and make sure that they use it for this purpose. That's perfectly fine. This process is for communities that do not want to do that, right? That they want to take this into their own hands. Like I said, for maybe a little while, we can form a mellow with a sunset where you're not committed to it for 30 years, you maybe commit to 5-7 years. And then you use that money to bring everything up to top notch. And by then work the kinks out of Measure E and take it over from there. So it is a moving target, and agree completely is, we have a lot of unknowns about Measure E at this point. So hope that helps.
Well, my second question is, there's a saying from the Bible that a servant who is faithful in little will be faithful in much. So here we have the city's been handling LMDs, and now the residents are being asked to give them control of more things and more funds. And so you want to evaluate how well they handled the LMDs. And I believe MBS was hired a few years ago to do an audit of how the LMDs had been managed. And then the city council voted to not release that audit to the public. So it seems to me that maybe before residents consider a CFD, that maybe the city should release the results of the LMD audits. Is the city intending to give us info about how the LMDs were managed before?
So Alicia, the audit that we perform on the assessment district program is in our website at the data center. You can find it right here. So this is just go to the menu, Data Oxnard Data Center. The audit that we performed was published in many meetings that I
There
was
were parts that were publicly released, but there was a part they voted to keep.
Okay, so I can address that. Very good. I just want to start with this. So this audit, which is a huge document, by the way, that review the full program from top to bottom, right? This audit is what resulted in the city creating the special districts division. Before 2015 or 17, when we finished the audit and then we implemented, made many changes to the districts. The LMDs were handled by, I don't know, no less than 13, 15 people throughout the city. None of them talking to each other. The LMD program was in big trouble, and the city general fund had contributed almost $3 million to subsidize it because the funds were driven into the negative. In essence, the city kept providing a high level of service without having the money to do so. And in accounting for a city, you can actually drive your fund balances into the negative. I cannot do that with my checking account, but the city can do that. So we went through this report. I held at least 8 community meetings throughout the whole city, did a whole tour of the city, went over, explained it. We formed the division and made a lot of corrections. So this report has been out all that time and it's available to you at our website. You can read it. Many of the things you see today come from this report. What Alicia is referring to is there was a second audit, right? It's an audit of, in the city circles, I think what you all call it is the admin fees, if I'm not mistaken. That's sort of the common name for it, right? And in this, we did an audit where I believe we audited a 5-year period. And the idea was to take a look at our funds being misused, meaning moved from one fund to another, right? From one district to another. And for the 5-year period, we found a few things, not a lot. And in fact, the city took action in 2017-18, Jerry, I don't remember this particular resolution, but it made transfers totaling about $178,000 or $180,000 to kind of clean things up. So that period was corrected. The question was, what about the past, right? Because these districts go back 30 years. So the problem was we could not get the data from the city because it was no longer available. We just couldn't find it to go further. We just don't have enough to figure what happened 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago. So the audit that we perform, the city released, I want to say a 1 or 2 year period of it, made the corrections for 178 of it, and that's where it was left. That was a decision made by council. And so all I can say is if I had the data to go back, I'm more than happy to look at it, but we just don't have it. I mean, those records are long gone and we couldn't even figure anything out at this point. So, and this is what we are today. All I can say is the city has taken a lot of steps, including putting $3 million of the general fund to kind of clean all these accounts that were subsidized, bring everything back to zero or balances, has made a lot of changes, a lot of improvements since the audit that we have here on the screen. And I will say that the program as it exists today is as good or better than most agencies have out there in the sense of compliance with the law, and the record keeping that they're doing is way better than anybody else because it has been under such a microscope on an audit. So I hope you find that helpful.
And again, I'd just like to add that that's why we're here tonight, is because there have been individuals that have come forward and said that they don't like the improvements that are around their community or in their community, and they want to know what can be done. So we're presenting your community with the options that we think are viable, and we are trying to do it in a manner that doesn't spend any extra money that we don't have to, without knowing that there is full support for moving forward in a manner that would cost more money upfront. So, Alicia, was that your last question that you had? I think maybe since
Yeah, I went ahead and muted, but I
Muted.
just put,
Okay.
I just put in the chat a comment that I think the council ought to release the confidential portion before they ask residents to do what we're being asked to do here.
And you're not necessarily being asked to do so that's kind of what I wanted to say is you're not being asked to do anything. You're being asked if you want to start a citizens committee, if you want to volunteer, and or if you would like to form a new district to have additional funding. The city is not saying, please come forward and give us more money. The city is asking what you want to do. That's what this meeting's about. What do you and your neighbors want to do? The city is completely fine with you saying, we don't want to do anything right now. We are just going to wait and see what happens with Measure E. We're going to see, and I think when Pablo talks about Measure E, you know, in the survey results, we see that public safety is #1 and homelessness. We talked about both of those, and those are very important to me. So when I see that, that's where Measure E funds will most likely go. There's a meeting tomorrow night, I believe, Jerry, to talk about priority of those funds. Is that right?
There is a
Jerry?
special city council meeting.
So I think that will probably be where most individuals want those funds to those items to first be addressed. But no, you're not being asked to form a special district, Melrose, at all. You're being asked to form a committee to let us know what you'd like to have done. So
what we're asking is that because the city cannot do anything really meaningful about increasing your taxes or collecting more money or forming a district without your vote, right? It's just impossible. It's not going to happen. The only way this works is, and all we're asking is that you volunteer to be in a committee, a group of you, the ones here, so that you can host meetings with us and other residents, work with us on running some numbers, in sharing the idea of if you wanted to take matters into your hands, right, and do something above and beyond the assessment district funding that you do now, then we will work with you to provide you with the information, the flyers, everything you need, host meetings with you together. I've done meetings in homes in Oxnard with groups of people, which I prefer over Zoom, because usually you have cookies or something really good for me. Not here today, but that's the idea, that we work with you to help you spread the word and see what your neighbors want to do. And if you as a community, as neighbors say, no, we don't want to pay anymore, we want to wait for the city to do this or that, and we think the city should do more with the general fund, whatever money they get it from, that's perfectly fine. And that will be a great result for Danielle and I as outreach and public engagement consultants. If we were able to get you to work with us through a period of time, have some meetings, and get to that conclusion, we will have been successful. We can go back to the city and say, hey, we met with these residents, they met with each other, and they all agree that they want to hold the line, and this is what they want to do. And that's perfectly fine. That's a great outcome, actually. So, you know, some of you may actually prefer to do something else, and that's okay too. So.
I know we are running far over here, so let's see. Faith mentions that there were people out on social media she saw that are doing cleanup. There's some good work being done out there. That her husband and her husband have donated 30,000 hours of their time for a nonprofit in Rancho Cucamonga. City has amazing volunteer program, and their efforts show throughout the city. Why can't Oxnard start a program like that?
So Recreation does have a volunteer program. During non-COVID times, they do meetup cleanup throughout the year. The Parks Department or Division is also working to structure a volunteer program within their division to work towards some cleanups of general fund areas. Right now, the Special Districts Division, based on our staffing level, we currently have 3 vacant positions, don't have the ability to really put together a cohesive volunteer program. That doesn't mean that that's not in the future for special districts. And Faith did mention in one of her other questions about people being parked on Patterson in RVs and leaving trash. If that is something that you see on a regular basis, please feel free to reach out to me or put in a 311. I can work with your beat officer to try and get some compliance and citing for people who are parked over their allotted time frame.
Okay, and let me address a question. Ham, thank you for your comment. Spell HAMM. I appreciate that because, you know, sometimes I go very fast trying to get through the slides. So the comment from Ham is, there's a conversation going on in the chat here about that we've been steered towards an issue, Melrose, and that in previous meetings I mentioned at an HOA. So in this slide that I have on the screen, you can still see it, right, Danielle? We're still sharing. I did mention that there is support for a homeowners association. Immediately in the chat, however, there were comments like, we don't want one of those, right? This is why I really can't steer you in any direction. What I'm saying is, in my thought process, if I don't like an HOA for me, but an HOA has its advantages, right? You may be able to achieve lower costs administratively, but you will still, if an HOA was doing the work, they will have to pay prevailing wages. So from a contract standpoint, what you pay the contractor, that's not going to change, but it may be more efficient. That may be something you want to do. Yes, if you're willing as a group to form or join an existing HOA, we will work with you and the city on drafting an agreement that allows for the HOA to maintain the improvements, take them over, and do all that goody stuff. That is fantastic. An HOA works if you want it. It sounds like some of you do, some of you do not, which is why we can't make this decision for you, right? The city can't make this decision. That's what this process is exactly about, is to work with you to figure out what you as a group want to do. The Melrose has been mentioned because in the survey, which again, very few people answer, so it's really hard to show a decision or make a decision or anything. There's no decision being made tonight. But based on the needs that you have, if you want sidewalks, if you want streets, if you want the outside perimeter, where a landscaping and lighting district can't do all of that. Legally, it can't. So that is a mellow. That's what you're asking for by providing a long list of improvements, right, of things to maintain, to take over, because it's very, very flexible. But that could also be an HOA. We do not know. So please don't feel like we're steering you in any direction, because at the end of the day, we really can't make that decision for you. Bottom line is that's a decision you're going to make. So hope that helps.
Yeah, there was a follow-up question that saying who doesn't have to pay prevailing wages. I believe any contractors that are on city property will have to pay prevailing wage.
Right, and if the HOA is, like I said, is yes, it can be more efficient on the administrative side. That's where I think you'll save some money. In general, private industry administratively is going to be cheaper than a bureaucracy like government, right? Any government agency is going to cost you more. So I agree 100%. If that's what you all want, we'll be right there with you and work with Jerry. And Jerry, there's HOAs out there that are doing some of the work. So we just have to draft an agreement and kind of go down that route. Work with the city attorney's office and figure all that out. That's fantastic.
Okay, so I think that we've answered the questions that we received in the chat here, and we've gone significantly over time, but if we have any members of the community that want to move forward with any options, volunteer groups, being part of a committee that can communicate directly with Jerry about your specific communities, a liaison between your neighbors and the special districts division, or anything that anyone that wants to move forward, please email me at dwood@civicmic.com if you'd like to be part of the citizens committee. If we don't hear from any of you, then Pablo, what will happen if no one emails me, because I don't have any emails in my inbox at this point?
Then we won't have more meetings. So I just want to say that this process, unfortunately, we have to deal with the cards that we've been given, right? When I started in the industry, assessment districts and all this kind of stuff was way simpler. way easier. And it's gotten really, really complicated. Ultimately, we're here to help you. We're here to answer your questions, get you through the process, right? But really, our ultimate goal is to facilitate a process under which you can see your improvements, your landscaping. I have been to the city many, many, many times. I've stayed there, had many meetings, driven through every community, met with many of you, and I know that it looks pretty bad. It looks bad. It's just the way, there's no way around it. The mediums look bad, the parkways look horrible, the perimeter looks really, really bad. Ideally, what we want to do is facilitate a process that allows you to end up with beautiful landscaping, beautiful sidewalks, tree trimming that is on schedule and things like that. If we can facilitate that process through any means necessary, if it's an HOA, if it's a CFD, great. But we don't have enough people here to do that, right? So that's what we need you to organize, get together, and hopefully that can happen. So we'll be here for you. Please let us know, volunteer, and hopefully we can work with you through the next year or whatever it takes to get to that point.
And Faith, yes, flyers would help. We've mailed flyers, but boots on the ground
and postcards.
And postcards. We've
Yep.
done a significant number of mailings,
And
emails.
Yes.
So we've done flyers, postcards, different size postcards, different colors, fonts,
Yeah.
kind of a whole different levels of approach for mailings. But yeah, we're looking to see if there is a committee that would like to participate in going about it some other way. Yeah, giving out cookies, that's right. But some other way that we can reach the community. And so if you'd like to participate in that, please send an email. I do see that I have someone who has volunteered for the committee. So thank you for that. And I hope to see more of you added to this list. I will be in contact with you in the next few days on next steps for your community and to see if we can get more people involved. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight and spending your evening with us and asking really good questions. And we hope to be able to move in a direction that improves your community in any manner. Right. So thank you. Anything else, Pablo or Jerry?
You have a fantastic night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Everyone.
Thank you.
I don't know an answer, Dan.
Was there a question there? Before we go, we hear a voice.
Yes, I had a question before you go.
Go ahead, of course.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Nilsson. I live in the 25 area, I guess it is. I was curious because I've been here 14 years and I'm retired. I worked for the state for years running maintenance. I did pile driving, high mast lighting, everything. And I'm just curious because I heard that the entrance to my area off of Victoria that goes to Nantucket is not the city's responsibility, but it's a pretty large easement with a large sprinkler system. And it's never been taken care of since I've been here. Usually when you do contracts with landscapers, because I've had those things and watched those and wrote them up myself, you have ground studies once a year for bugs, with the soil is healthy. No one's done that. No one watered it. The box door fell off of the controller for the sprinkler system. And if the city is not responsible for that area, whose area is it? I'm just curious who's responsible for it. If it's just this kind of free floating area there, no one has any responsibility to take care of.
I'm trying to find so you're in 25. Where is this at on 7th?
If you come down Victoria, coming in west, on the west side of the neighborhood, there's it comes down, you turn into the neighborhood onto Nantucket.
Hold on, Jerry's coming back.
I think you're the wrong way. You might be you need to go towards Victoria.
Okay, yeah, right here. So from Victoria into Nantucket?
Correct.
And then that's a dead end there. Is that the entrance you're talking about right there?
Yeah. It used to be very nice. And I've lived here 14 years. And at one time before I lived here, it was really nice. it started going bad just after I moved in here. And I mean, bugs took over all the hedges. And you're supposed to, if you have a real contract and real people to know what they're doing, you do a soil sample every year. You test for different bugs that might be killing beetles, it might be killing your trees. I used to deal with this all the time, and I've never seen anybody do it. I've been trimming the 4 trees along the street of my house because people walk into them. Not
Okay,
once.
so we have,
So
just
kind
to,
of a dry kind of question.
yeah, so just to confirm, if it's off Victoria, this is all general fund maintained, not the assessment districts,
They
which
have
I
not
mentioned here.
maintained it.
I'm sorry?
Nobody's been maintaining it.
Correct, once
After it
a
was
year.
dead recently, once
Yeah.
a year.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's their property.
Yep,
And
and
a
it's
blight.
once,
I mean, so maybe they should take care of it since it's theirs. It's the city's. I mean, it's so bad. Everything just is dead. They
Right,
came
and
after it was dead.
that's
and
my,
cleaned up
that,
the dead.
yeah, no, that I agree. That has been my comment, that I have driven through the city, and this is what we call the exterior medians, parkways improvements that are now, they're handled by the general fund. They're on once a year schedule. And as I mentioned,
Okay.
that's because they don't have any funding. So yes, absolutely, they should do better. And absolutely, you want to bring that back. And it's sad to see these trees.
Well, if you have, I agree. I'm not trying to be argue. I mean, I didn't vote for you, so you're not the one I want to yell at. You know, I'd rather yell at some of your elected people, but they sent you.
That's right.
But, you know, my confusion is, for 14 years, no one's cut the trees in my neighborhood. So where's my rebate? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to be a picky guy here, but you got to look at the past to go forward, or we'll do the same thing over again. I mean, a lot of times you have contractors, because I used to do a deal with contractors for the state, and I used to write the contracts. And a lot of times they don't do the work, or they show up and they do this and that, and
Right.
they don't, and not the things so if nobody's actually watching them or pointing things out regularly, because it's a pain in the
I got
neck,
it. And so,
it doesn't get done.
so this is what,
And I
that's
see it
why I've
here.
been saying through this meeting that we have to make a distinction between the city and the special districts division. When we did the audit that I put on the screen in 2015, and I mentioned the 13, 14 people through the city were handling the assessment districts, that's exactly what was happening. There was nobody really responsible, accountable for doing these inspections or making sure that stuff was happening. You now have Jerry and this division. So moving forward, because yeah, we have learned from the past. We did that by doing the audit, and believe me, I have been at the city enough to know what has gone wrong. So moving forward, what we're saying is, you're going to do something where you're going to pay extra for it. It needs to be handled by this division, so that you have a small group of people you can hold accountable. You can get that done, right? Otherwise, it's too big of an organization. So I think that has been my point all along, that I wouldn't support something that just goes to the general fund, and then how do you track that, right? So it's
I left a comment too, and I won't keep you because I know everybody wants to go, and some people are still working, but or might be at work. But as far as the Oxnard Harbor District, I made a comment because they pay a certain amount for roads because of the traffic going down Wainimi Road, Pleasant Down, all these roads. It comes out of the profits the port makes, and they go for the general. Victoria should be getting some of that money, and that's why I mentioned I haven't been paying attention because I've retired, and I'm not interested in reliving board meetings every second week of the month and doing all that stuff again.
Good for you.
Not right now, anyway. I used to be in part of those board meetings,
Yes.
but some of that money should be going to these roads and easements, and especially Victoria and those roads, because you have traffic going to the port.
Right.
So some of that money is I didn't see anywhere anybody bring up how much that is. I can look into it myself and find out tomorrow. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Any other last minute questions or?
Just for a point of clarification, Pablo, with regards to Nantucket, I believe that was Pelican Point, and it was dissolved after the general benefit study was done because the only thing that was being maintained by the assessment district was that traffic circle at the end.
Right.
So it was converted into drought tolerant and dissolved, and is now, that traffic circle is now general fund responsibility as well.
Once a year. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. You have a fantastic night. Again, if you come up with any questions whatsoever, you can email Danielle or I, and we're more than happy to respond. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.